Aidan awoke to the soft glow of morning lights slipping through his workshop window. The storm had passed, leaving the world wet and fresh. Ilara sat at a small table, sipping a cup of hot broth. Steam curled into the cool air as she lifted the bowl to her lips. Aidan paused by the door, watching her with quiet curiosity. She looked up and smiled, the first gentle expression he had seen. "Thank you for this," she said, setting the bowl down. "Your food tastes of home." Her voice held something like wonder. Aidan nodded and stepped forward. "I'm glad you are safe," he said. "Last night was bad. You traveled far." Ilara drew in a breath and held it for a moment. Then she said, "I owe you something in return." She reached into her cloak and pulled out a small, smooth stone that glowed faintly in her hand. The light was soft, like a star seen from a distance. Aidan's brow furrowed. "What is that?" he asked. She held it out. "This is a seed from my world. It can make anything grow. I can make dead land bloom. I can heal broken things. But it needs shelter to work." Aidan stared. "What do you mean?" Ilara rose and moved to the door. She opened it wide, and the cool breeze drifted inside. She placed the stone on the threshold where rain had pooled. Within seconds, green tendrils of light wound around it. A small sprout pushed through the puddle, leaves unfolding like tiny sails. Aidan knelt to watch. The plant grew fast, unfurling 4 smooth leaves in a circle. Water dripped off each leaf and onto the floor, leaving a tiny green stain. Ilara turned to him. "Give me shelter, and I'll give you what no human woman can," she repeated softly. Her eyes shone. "I promise to share this gift with you and those you care for." Aidan swallowed hard. He had heard stories of alien wonders, but never believed them. Now, a miracle stood before him. He rose and closed the door, cutting off the fresh breeze. "If I keep you safe," he said, voice steady, "will you teach me to use this power?" He stepped toward the stone. Ilara nodded. "Yes, but only if you truly accept me as you would any friend." She placed a hand on his shoulder. Her touch was cool but comforting. "Trust must grow like the plant. It needs time." Aidan looked into her eyes, clear and earnest. He offered a small smile. "Then you have shelter, Ilara. You'll be safe here as long as you wish." They stood together by the sprouting plant. Outside, sunlight broke through the clouds, casting bright patches on the wet ground. Inside, a new hope took root. Aidan felt something change in his chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with the lantern's flame. And Ilara, with her secret gift, felt that she had found a place where she could belong. The promise hung between them, simple and powerful, shelter for a miracle. Ilara and Aidan stepped out onto the dusty road as the sun rose high over the settlement. Word of the stranger with pale blue-purple skin spread like wildfire. Farmers stopped their plows and stared. Traders paused their carts and whispered. Children pointed and ran home, breathless with excitement. At the market square, old Mrs. Kellen pressed her thin lips together. "He hides an alien woman," she muttered to the baker. "What does he think he is doing?" The baker shrugged and wrapped a loaf in brown paper. "I hear she can make fields bloom with a single touch," he said, voice low. "But that kind of power is dangerous." In the workshop next door, Aidan tried to focus on his repairs. A loose bolt rattled in his toolbox. He reached for the wrench but froze when he heard raised voices outside. He opened the door and found 2 miners arguing. "She belongs to the governor," one miner insisted. "He wants to study her gifts. He'll kill her for science. Or sell her to the highest bidder," the other replied. "A human woman cannot do what she can. They will use her until she breaks." Aidan's heart pounded. He shut the door and leaned against the frame. Ilara watched from the cot in the corner. Her eyes held a sad knowing. She rose and joined him outside. "Let them talk," she said quietly. Her voice carried calm. "They know nothing of my world or my promise." Aidan nodded but felt his resolve shake. He led her back inside and locked the door. He barred the windows with wooden planks. He would not let anyone force her out. By midday, a stern rider approached on a dark mare. Dust billowed behind him. He wore the magistrate's gold-trimmed cloak and rode straight to Aiden's gate. Villagers fell silent as he dismounted. "Aiden Conroy," the magistrate called. His voice echoed on the empty street. "I have orders to find and remove any alien life forms on this planet. I hear you harbor one." Aiden stepped forward, chest tight. "She is under my protection," he said. "She has done me no harm." The magistrate's eyes narrowed. "You have 24 hours to hand her over. After that, you will face the law." Aiden's hands clenched. He met the man's glare. "I will not turn her in," he replied. "She is my guest." The magistrate spat on the ground. "Then I will return with soldiers. Think on your choice." He mounted his horse and rode away, leaving the sun to set fear and doubt in Aiden's mind. Night came swift. Ilara sat by the lantern's glow, weaving the simple cloth into a small pouch. Aiden watched her fingers work. "What are you doing?" he asked. "I prepare," she said softly. "I must leave if they come with swords." Aiden shook his head. "No," he said firmly. "You stay. This is your home now." Ilara paused and looked up. Her eyes glimmered in the lamplight. "Then I will trust you," she whispered. And in that moment, two strangers bound themselves together against the storm of gossip and fear that swept through the outpost. Ilara slept on the cot as Aiden kept watch by the door. Midnight air was cool and still. Then came a distant shout, sharp and angry. Aiden sat up straight. He put out the lantern light and moved to the window. Outside, torches bobbed in the dark. Rough figures crept along the road, carrying crude weapons. Raiders had come for Ilara. Aiden felt his heart pound. He gently shook Ilara's shoulder. "Wake up," he whispered. "They are here." Ilara opened her eyes. She rose, steady and calm. "Show me," she said. Aiden slipped on his boots and grabbed a long metal rod. It was not much of a weapon, but it was all he had. He led Ilara to the workshop door. Through the window slit, he saw 6 raiders swarm toward his gate. They threw rocks at the wooden planks. One blow cracked the board. Aiden swung the rod, driving the nearest man back. The raider hissed and raised a dagger. Before he could strike, Ilara held out her hand. A faint hum filled the air. A translucent dome formed around Aiden and Ilara. It glowed like a pale moon. The raider's dagger struck the shield with a loud clang and bounced off. The other raiders froze. Torches reflected off the dome, making it shine like water. One raider lunged with his axe, but his weapon shattered against the barrier. Splinters flew as he stumbled backward. Aiden stared in awe. He had never seen such power. Ilara's face was calm, but her eyes burned with quiet strength. The leader of the raiders roared in anger. He kicked at the shield. "Break it," he shouted. "She belongs to us." Ilara did not answer. She lowered her hand, and the dome expanded, pushing the raiders back like a tide. They tripped over each other and fell into the mud. Their torches went out as the ground shook beneath them. Aiden seized the moment. He flung open the door and shouted, "Leave now or face worse." The raiders scrambled to their feet. In the pale light, they saw Aiden standing beside a living shield. Fear spread in their eyes. Without another word, they turned and ran into the night. Aiden dropped to his knees and pressed his hand against the floor. He breathed hard, chest rising and falling. Ilara knelt beside him, the shield fading with her lowered arm. "Are you hurt?" she asked, voice soft. Aiden shook his head. He looked at the shattered boards and splintered tools. "No," he said, "but they will come back." Ilara helped him stand. She placed her hand on his shoulder, warming him in the cool night. "Then we will be ready," she said. They stood together in the doorway. Beyond them, the settlement lay silent under the moon. The raiders' tracks disappeared into the darkness, but the memory of fear and strength lingered. Aiden looked at Ilara with new respect. "Thank you," he said simply. Ilara nodded. "We protect each other," she replied. Inside the workshop, the lantern flickered back to life. Aiden and Ilara began to repair the gate. In the quiet of the night, they worked side by side, two strangers bound by courage and a shared promise. The sun climbed above the horizon, gold light spilling into the settlement. Aiden walked with Ilara toward the shattered gate. Around them, villagers gathered, some limping from bruises, others nursing splinters from broken boards. The air held both relief and tension. No one spoke at first. They simply watched the alien girl who had saved them. Ilara knelt beside a wounded farmer whose arm lay at an odd angle. He gasped when she placed her cool hand on his elbow. A soft hum filled the air. The man's breath stilled as the bones slid back into place. A faint glow on her palm faded, leaving only smooth, unbroken skin. The farmer stared at his healed arm in wonder. Word spread quickly. A rusted bucket of water appeared at Ilara's side, as though summoned. She dipped her fingers and rinsed a woman's cut cheek. The red stain vanished. Children held out scraped knees without fear. Elderly villagers, once wary, approached to let her touch a twisted ankle or close a deep gash. Each time, Ilara's gentle power soothed pain and closed wounds. Aiden watched, pride swelling in his chest. He caught Mrs. Kellen's eye. Her scowl had softened into awe. Even the baker, who had whispered of danger, now stood with mouth open. He held out a loaf of bread as thanks. Ilara accepted it with a shy nod and passed it to Aiden. The simple gift felt like a bridge between their worlds. When the last wound was healed, silence fell again. Then Aiden cleared his throat. "You have saved more than this town," he said softly. "You have healed hearts too." Ilara looked up at him. Her violet eyes glimmered. "I only wish to repay your kindness," she replied. Villagers began to murmur among themselves. "She is a true friend," one man said. "We should help her," another agreed. A group stepped forward and offered firewood and fresh blankets. They spoke of fixing the walls and reinforcing the gate together, side by side with Aiden and Ilara. As the afternoon sun warmed the repaired courtyard, Aiden led Ilara to a circle of stones where a small fire crackled. He handed her a cup of spiced tea. She wrapped her hands around it and inhaled the sweet steam. "On my world," she said, "we shared food and stories by fire. This reminds me of home." Aiden smiled. "Then it is a new home," he said. "We will share our stories now." Ilara nodded and sipped the tea. Around them, the town buzzed with renewed hope. Farmers returned to their fields, laughter echoing where fear had reigned. In that moment, human and alien stood not as strangers, but as friends united. The bond of trust glowed brighter than any power. Aiden stood on a low hill outside the settlement as dawn broke. He saw three dark shapes moving slowly above the fields. Alien ships glinted in the early light. Their sleek hulls looked cold and unwelcoming. Aiden's heart thumped. He knew these were not friendly traders. They had come for Ilara. He ran back to town shouting, "Enemy ships are coming. Get to work." Villagers dropped farm tools and raced to gather wood and metal. Mothers lifted crying children toward safe corners. Blacksmiths grabbed hammers and nails. Everyone moved as one, guided by fear, but also by the hope Ilara had given them. At the workshop gate, Aiden met Ilara. Her violet eyes were steady. She placed a hand on his arm. "We can protect this place," she said, "but we must work together." Aiden nodded and turned to the crowd. "Build barricades at the gate," he called. "Dig ditches along the road. Put rocks in front of every door." His voice carried over the noise of chopping axes and hammering nails. Ilara closed her eyes and breathed in deep. Then she opened her hand and let a faint light drift from her palm. Wherever the light touched, wood grew stronger and metal glowed faintly. She moved from plank to beam, guiding the villagers' work. Walls rose twice as fast. Gates felt solid as stone. Even simple nails shone with new strength. The people whispered in awe as they worked. A small group gathered around the smith's anvil. Ilara bent close to the hot iron. She pressed her palm against the glowing metal. Sparks flew, but the iron did not burn her hand. Instead, it set itself into a perfect shape, long spikes for the fence, curved hooks for the gate. When she pulled away, the spikes were smooth and sharp. The hooks fit without any play. The smith stared at the tools in his hand as if he held magic. By mid-morning, the barricade stood ready. Tall wooden walls blocked the main road. Trenches ran along the sides. Ilara and Aiden climbed onto the workshop roof to watch. The ships drifted lower, their landing ramps unfolding like giant doors. Dust rose beneath their hulls. A hush fell over the town. "Stay calm," Aiden whispered. "We are ready." Villagers lined the walls, some armed with pitchforks, others with ropes and lanterns. Ilara stood beside Aiden, her cloak catching the sunlight. She looked like a quiet warrior. Nobody doubted her power now. As the first ramp touched the ground, Aiden drew a deep breath. Ilara placed her hand on his shoulder. "Together," she said softly. Together, they would face whatever came next. And in that moment, the settlement held its breath, united by trust, courage, and a promise that no human woman could give. Aiden felt his heart hammer as the first enemy soldier stepped from the lowered ramp. Dozens more followed, clad in dark armor and carrying strange weapons. The villagers braced behind their barricades. Aiden climbed down from the roof and raised his voice. "Hold the line. Don't let them through." His words rang clear in the morning air. The soldiers charged. Farmers thrust pitchforks and miners swung hammers. A rock flew and struck one soldier's helmet, cracking it. Another was tripped by a hidden rope trap. The barricade shook under the weight of enemy shields, but it held. Ilara stood just behind the front line. She raised her hand and called forth a shield of energy that rippled like water. Each strike against it rang out like a bell. Aiden met a soldier on the ground. The man lunged with a blade, but Aiden sidestepped and knocked the weapon away with his elbow. He felt the blade scrape his coat, but did not flinch. Around him, villagers fought with courage he had rarely seen. A blacksmith tossed a red-hot nail into the soldier's boot, making him pull back in pain. A teacher he had known since childhood lifted an old crate and struck a second soldier on the knee. Each human blow was simple, but it carried fierce purpose. Ilara moved down the line, placing her hands on broken planks and dented metal. Wherever her touch fell, wood straightened and metal glowed anew. She pressed her palms together and thrust forward. A burst of green energy shot along the barricade. Knotting vines together so thickly that no soldier could break through. The vines grew across the ground, sweeping enemy feet from under them. Soldiers tumbled into the dirt, their armor clanking as they fell. Seeing this, Aiden called out, "Now, push them back." With a shout, the villagers surged forward. They used their tools, their strength, and their determination. Children who had hidden now held torches and cheered. Even the elderly rolled away fallen timbers to block the retreat. The soldiers, confused and battered, fought to keep their footing, but human resolve pressed on like a wave. At the edge of the courtyard, Aiden and Ilara stood side by side. Enemy captain and soldiers retreated toward their ship, stumbling over vines and debris. Ilara lowered her hands, and the vines fell slack. The captain gave one last glare and signaled his men to withdraw. Dust kicked up as their ramp rose, and the ship lifted off, slipping into the blue sky. Silence followed the ship's roar. The villagers looked at one another, breathing hard but smiling. Aiden wiped sweat from his brow and turned to Ilara. "We did it," he said. She nodded, her violet eyes soft with relief. Around them, people cheered and embraced. In that moment, humans and aliens stood united, stronger together, ready to face any challenge as one. The sky was clear, and the air smelled of smoke from the battle. Aiden walked with Ilara toward the edge of the fields. Everywhere he looked, he saw broken stalks and scorched earth. The rich soil lay dry and cracked. The town's food supply had been lost. Farmers stood in small groups, heads bent in worry. Ilara paused at the field's border. She knelt on the hard ground. Aiden knelt beside her, heart heavy. The alien girl placed both hands flat on the soil. She closed her eyes and took a steady breath. Around them, the wind was still. Even the birds seemed to wait. A pale green light began to glow where her palms touched the dirt. It spread slowly at first, like dawn breaking through night. Aiden blinked, unsure if his eyes were playing tricks. The light pulsed in gentle waves. Then it sank into the soil, and the first green shoot pushed up between cracked earth. Aiden gasped. "Look," he whispered. Ilara opened her eyes. She smiled softly. "This is what I promised," she said, voice calm and hopeful. The green shoot grew taller in seconds. It unfurled 2 bright leaves. Then 3 more sprouts burst from the ground around it. They formed a circle of young plants. Within moments, the dry soil was dotted with fresh green life. Farmers and townsfolk edged forward. They knelt at the furthest hold of the light. Where they touched the ground, grass began to spread. It rolled out like a soft carpet. Rows of tiny shoots broke ground in neat lines, as if seeds had been sown the day before. A young woman touched her fingertips to a sprout. Instantly, it thickened and shot upward, turning into a row of sturdy stalks, heavy with green buds. Behind her, a boy pressed his hand to a barren patch. Flowers burst into bloom. Pale blue petals circling golden centers, bright as new suns. Aiden felt tears rise. He knelt and pressed his hands on the earth too. The ground was warm under his palms. It felt alive, like it was breathing. He looked up at Ilara. "You have saved us in more ways than one," he said softly. Ilara rose and stepped back. The field now lay green and lush as if it had never known war. The air carried the sweet scent of blossoms and new grass. Villagers cheered and rushed forward to gather handfuls of young shoots. They laughed as they touched the soft leaves. One old farmer bowed deeply before Ilara and whispered, "Thank you. You have given us life." Ilara watched, her violet eyes bright. She knelt again and drew a small seed from a pouch. It glowed faintly in her hand. She handed it to Aiden. "Plant this," she said. "I promise this gift will last as long as you care for it." Aiden took the seed and held it close. He felt hope fill his chest. Around them, people began to sow the seeds Ilara had granted. They worked together, side by side, their fear replaced by joy. As the sun dipped low, it cast golden light across the new field. Aiden stood beside Ilara. He placed his hand on her shoulder. "You have given us what no human woman can," he said, voice full of gratitude. Ilara smiled and looked at the thriving earth. "Then I have honored my promise," she replied. And so, under the gentle glow of sunset, the settlement found more than shelter. They found hope rooted deep in the soil, ready to grow strong for seasons to come. The morning sun rose bright over the green fields. Villagers worked in neat rows, harvesting young shoots and gathering baskets of fresh produce. Aiden walked among them, helping to lift heavy baskets and offering a word of thanks. Yet his eyes kept drifting to Ilara, who stood at the far edge of the field, watching quietly. As the last basket left the field, a hush fell. Ilara stepped forward and called to Aiden. He joined her under a lone oak tree at the field's edge. The wind carried the soft scent of grass and flowers. Ilara held out her hands. In her palms lay a tiny, glowing seed. "I have one final gift," she said, voice steady. "I can heal every wound, restore every dead field, and end suffering here forever. But I must use my full power to do so. It may leave me too weak to live." Aiden's heart tightened. He recalled how she had healed broken bones, driven off raiders, and made the earth bloom. He felt grateful but terrified for her life. "Ilara," he said softly, "you have given us so much already. You saved our town. You gave our land life." She nodded. "I promise to give you what no human woman can. This is a choice I must make. I will not hide it." Aiden looked across the fields where families laughed and children played. He saw the fear in the elder's eyes, still trusting her magic. "If you do this, there may be nothing left of you," he whispered. Ilara's violet eyes met his. "I accept that risk," she replied. "My world has no home for me. My life was lost in war. I have found meaning here. If I can give more, I will." Aiden closed his eyes. He pressed his hand to his chest, where his heart pounded. He thought of the farmer who had lost his leg, now walking free. He thought of the mother whose child's fever had vanished in seconds. He thought of the villagers who had stood with him, united by hope. All of it came from her sacrifice. He opened his eyes and reached for her hands. "Ilara," he said, "you do not have to do this alone." He paused. "I will share your burden. We will work this gift together. Let me stand beside you, so your strength may be mine too." Ilara's lips curved into a small, relieved smile. "Together," she repeated. She placed one hand on Aiden's heart and the other on the seed. Soft green light spread from their joined hands into the earth. A wave of warmth rolled outward. Fields far beyond seemed to shimmer. The light seeped into every furrow and every home. A gentle hum rose in the air like a distant song. In that moment, Aiden felt Ilara's power pulse through him. He did not feel fear. He felt life itself. And for the first time, he knew that some gifts were meant to be shared. Together, they would give their world what no human woman or man could give alone. A gentle glow spread from Aiden and Ilara's joined hands, pulsing like a calm heartbeat. The green light flowed into the seed and sank into the soil. The earth trembled softly, then settled into stillness. Fields stretched out, lush and bright, as if painted by the dawn itself. Villagers watched from their doorways, eyes wide with awe. Ilara sank to one knee, breathing deeply. Aiden supported her, feeling her strength wane. He knelt beside her and offered his cloak, wrapping it gently around her shoulders. Her violet eyes shone with gratitude and relief. "It is done," she whispered. "The land will flourish, and the wounds of this town are healed." She closed her eyes, and Aiden thought her breathing had slowed. Panic tightened his chest. He pressed her hand to his lips. "Stay with me," he urged softly. A sudden breeze rustled through the oaks, carrying the laughter of children and the calls of grateful farmers. Life in the settlement had taken on a new rhythm. Aiden felt the pulse of the land echo his own heartbeat. He clasped Ilara's hand and looked into her eyes. "You gave us everything," he said. "Now rest, and let us care for you." Ilara smiled, a small, tired curve of her lips. "I have found a home," she said, voice faint. "Because of you." She closed her eyes, and Aiden feared she might slip away. He pressed his forehead to her hand, willing her to stay. Just then, a soft murmur rose among the villagers. They'd formed a circle around the pair, carrying gifts. Bowls of warm soup, blankets woven from soft wool, and jars of sweet honey. An old teacher knelt and placed a gentle hand on Ilara's other shoulder. "You are one of us now," she said. "We will not lose you." Touched by their kindness, Ilara's chest rose again with a stronger breath. Her color returned as warmth flooded her face. Aiden exhaled, relief washing over him. Ilara opened her eyes and saw the faces of those she had saved. Tears gathered at the corners of her eyes. "This is my gift," she whispered. "Not power, but friendship." She reached out and touched the faces of the teacher, the farmer, and the child. Each felt a pulse of gentle energy, like a soft touch on the heart. Smiles blossomed. Aiden helped Ilara to stand. Though she leaned on him, her strength had returned. The glow around them faded, leaving only the richness of the land and the warmth of the sun. The villagers began to cheer, lifting hats and shouting blessings. Hand in hand, Aidan and Ilara walked toward the heart of the settlement. The rebuilt gates stood strong, and the pathways were lined with green grass. Flowers bloomed in colors no human garden had seen before. Birds nested in the eaves of rooftops, their songs bright and clear. At the center, Aidan raised Ilara's hand. "Today we stand together," he declared, "human and alien, united by trust." The crowd cheered again, and Ilara let out a soft laugh, her spirit renewed. As the sun climbed higher, Aidan and Ilara looked over the world they had saved. Under the endless blue sky, they knew this was not an end, but a beginning. Together, they had shelter and something more, a promise of hope, friendship, and a future where no one stood alone.